in the Cover 3 tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where Joseph is wondering who will have the, and I quote, unmitigated gall to go against our troops and lay the points with the Irish this weekend in MetLife Stadium. Now, for our actual picks, Joseph, as everyone in the tailgate knows, you come on back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. But Notre Dame-Navy will get a spotlight a little bit later on in this big game breakdown episode. That Corey wants to see a little Pitt in Syracuse. I think we can do that as well. But I mean, Danny, if it's okay, do you want to just like go ahead and open up this market? I mean, I kind of think we should like not even mess around. Let's check in with I'm
swapping out notebooks here.
Okay.
Going from my big game breakdown notebook to my trading logbook right there. The trading logbook.
Does your big game breakdown notebook say big game breakdown on it?
No, I need to get that one custom made. It's on order. I'm having them create one for me, but it is full of, so my daughter stole it last night and I have big game notes over there. And then she was taking it and she was drawing pictures. And so she ruined one of my pages, which is as OCD, that kind of bothers me. All right.
She's a regular Paula Picasso. I mean,
exactly. Sell those. Forget selling them. We'll rip that out and put it on eBay. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is sell. And that's kind of started with some Heisman thoughts here in the Heisman market, because that's probably my favorite thing to trade. And I really wish you could trade this the way that we do it. Like we've talked a lot about this, like getting to New York, because it's so hard to pick the actual winner. But I think getting to New York is a fascinating way to do it. And I'm going to count this as a small gain. So I'm selling my Travis Hunter, which I gave you guys at 17-1. I think it's at 15-1 right now. So small gain. I'm going to sell that. What's going on with the shoulder? I think that's a significant issue. We've talked about what makes him special is the fact that he's playing over 100 snaps a game, but we've also wondered aloud, how long is this sustainable? How long can he keep going? I think it's an issue. If you were going to, I would sell my Travis Hunter, and I actually would consider buying a small piece of Shedeur Sanders, who's at 60-1. Like if you were going to take one Colorado player saying, okay, if this team gets hot, maybe they do win the Big 12 or get to the Big 12 championship game even, which who knows how the heck this conference is going to play out. I think Shedeur is the one that's the real value play here. So at 60-1, I think Shedeur has the better chance of getting to New York because of Travis Hunter's injury issues that all of a sudden have cropped up, because of his usage rate, which is on, are they going to dial that back? Again, what makes him special. And Shedeur still is playing really good and has always kept them competitive in games. I think Shedeur is probably the smarter play for the New York play on this. It might be good money, it might be throwing away good money, either one of these Colorado players. But if you were going to take one now, I would sell Travis Hunter and take Shedeur from the value perspective.
Tom, where's your new quarterback power rankings went live on CBSSports.com and on the app this week. Where's Shedeur at? I haven't gotten a chance to check it out.
He's not in the top 10. He's in the honorable mentions.
Okay.
A few too many turnovers.
Because I do agree generally. Like, I haven't gone under the hood on Shedeur's performances, but I will say that, like, on surface level, I agree with you, Danny. It does feel like he's been playing well, and he's been playing well with an offense that has been losing playmakers and, still been able to maintain performance there.
My question on it is, he's not in the ranking because he's not playing well. He fell out because they lost and he has to work his way back in. But
fair.
Colorado is playing better than expected. Their defense in particular has been pretty good the last few weeks compared to where it had been for sure. It's just if that team continues to play well and stays in the conversation where they're competing for a Big 12 title, like I still think Travis Hunter is going to be the one grabbing the headlines.
Mm.
So I don't know if I don't know if I would agree on that. I don't know if I'm selling him yet.
Yeah, if he comes back and plays well, like he's already done so much on defense. If you watch like I think they may just use him more on offense. If that's the case, he can continue to put up like big time highlights. I don't hate the sell. I get it. Like obviously playing that many snaps is probably catching up to him. But I do think there's still a chance for him to win this thing.
Oh yeah.
For Travis Hunter?
Hunter, yeah.
Okay. So then that buys in that follows in my next thought is I'm selling. I've heard a bunch of people say on our air, Mackenzie Brooks, say that this is whittled down to a 3-man Heisman race.
What?
Yeah, that's been a popular sentiment that has said like these three, and it's Ashton Genty, Cam Ward, and Dylan Gabriel. Like they're starting to separate. I could not disagree more. They are clearly the favorites with where they are, but holler at me after this weekend. And like Ashton Genty has a tricky matchup. I know Cam Ward might have his Heisman moment. You know, like that might be a huge moment for him, but I'm not, and like he's the favorite for a reason. And Dylan Gabriel still is one bad game away from, falling, well below these other guys. So I think this is wide open. I would say it's not the 3-man. It goes down 7 or 8 deep, which is great.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think you look at the Heisman race, and I think recency bias in particular this year, because nobody truly has, at least nobody from a more predictable viewpoint of being a quarterback has really kind of just risen up and grabbed this thing by the throat. When you look at the two players who are mentioned the most often or have been this year, one is the running back from Boise State, and the other is Travis Hunter, a wide receiver corner set, on a team that might not really be in contention come the end of the season. So I agree that the three guys who are favorites right now are deserving to be favorites based on how they've played recently. But the recently part, we've seen it every single week. These odds are fluctuating, and I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that what I've seen this year is we probably won't know who the Heisman is until somebody takes off in November.
And to your point, I almost wish that we probably do have the data. I wish we could go back and sort of track the way that the odds have fluctuated with previous Heisman Trophy races, because I understand the argument of like we're reverse engineering the odds makers, and what the odds makers are telling us is this, but the odds makers with something that is as soft as Heisman Trophy voting don't have enough data to be able to like firmly say that if Garrett Nussmeier leads LSU to an 11-game winning streak to close out the regular season and he's lighting it up, that a Heisman Trophy voter is not going to go and throw some love to Garrett Nussmeier that is not being reflected right now in the Heisman odds. Who knows? Maybe Alabama picks itself up off the mat, and Jalen Milroe, even as he's playing through what we all believe is like being really banged up, if he puts together that sort of dual threat statistical profile like we saw from Jaden in 23 or Lamar in 2016, then all of a sudden you're like, those are other names. Like I just see from the traditional school the path for too many other quarterbacks to be able to rise up there, where the soft factors, I guess you would say, of like how many Heisman voters are just fired up for the World Series right now,
Right. Right.
It's just,
I actually am pretty fired up for this, but yeah.
I have futures on both teams, so I'm also very fired up for this World Series.
How many picks did Carson Beck throw on Saturday?
3.
And his Heisman odds improved.
Yeah.
Like I snatched some of 35-1 like a week ago, right? Just thinking like, what if Georgia wins? Like I'd rather bet that than bet Georgia money line. And his odds improved. Like he's 25-1 now on FanDuel. So he's going to have big time windows to still show out, right? Yeah. Like you got to think about this. They still have Tennessee, which because Tennessee beat Alabama, that's a big time game. Like, and nobody's really scored on Tennessee's defense this year. Tennessee's offense has messed up a couple times, but you get that, and you still got the road trip to Georgia. What if he throws like 6 touchdowns, 1 pick in those games, and maybe throws for like 600 combined? Because it's not like Georgia can run the ball very well this year. You kind of got to chuck it around. That, like, he's still live. I get why he's priced as he is.
Mm-hmm.
If Nussmeier leads LSU to 11 straight wins, which again, if they win this weekend, they're going to be favored in all remaining games. Like, he's still alive. There are a lot of options here that I think are, Klubnik, I don't know how many more premier games he has to just light people up.
So I think he and Cam Ward, their path is statistically being at the top and having the conference game moment. Like the ACC championship game is their Heisman moment. And like, if nobody else really pops on, championship weekend, and either Cam Ward is undefeated or 1 loss, he has to be undefeated, because if he loses, that'll drop him off of it. But I think that's the path for either, because I was going to tell you, like, I'm adding to Klubnik still. Like, just adding to your winners. He's been incredible. He keeps getting better. Watching the UVA game, he's kind of making Heisman moment plays, escaping, but nobody's seeing them. But on that stage, and Cam Ward, we know how electric he is, and how if he beats Clemson, it'll probably be because he makes a couple circus type plays that are Heisman moments. That's the path for them.
I think the one thing Bud mentioned, though, that is just an absolutely brilliant reflection of how this all works right now is Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions,
and his
odds improved, even though he had nothing to do, or he had something, but he didn't really have much to do with Georgia winning that game. And a lot of people watched it, so you can't sit there and be like, well, that's just because, nobody was watching it, blah, blah, blah. They don't realize he didn't play well. But that is just how it works, because he's the quarterback of the good team. So as long as that team wins the big game, it earns him credibility with, these are the gambling markets. These aren't actually the voters, but it's also a reflection of how a lot of voters are going to look at the end of the year. He went to Texas on the road and beat them.
One more Heisman play for you. This is a super long shot, and this is only to get to New York. And I'm curious to see if you could trade the odds, like I wish you could. 80-1 currently. I'm a Patriot. Give me Bryson Daly. I mentioned this to Chip the other day, and he very astutely pointed out, because I said he leads the country in rushing touchdowns, not Ashton Genty, who everybody's talking about. Chip did say he has one more game. And in that additional game, he did have 6 total touchdowns in that game. So that might have helped. But he's also 4th in rushing, in rushing yards per game. So he's getting 123 per game. The time to buy is now. If they beat Notre Dame, that's his ticket. We've seen Keenan Reynolds get there from Navy a few years ago. People love the story. If they can pull that off, and even going into that week, it'll be a huge week for him. So I think Bryson Daly would be, if you could trade these again. So I'm adding it, assuming we're trading these kind of, we'll see how it goes. Maybe I get it maybe if he wins and keeps winning, then it goes to 50-1 before they play Notre Dame, and you sell it before that game. But I don't even think it's that crazy. They're playing good. And I do think Army is better than Navy. So I like those odds better. And he's putting up better stats than Blake Horvath. So I had one of those. You mentioned Kirby Smart and Carson Beck, and we've talked about him. I thought Kirby missed a moment in that game. It's gonna get to my next buy. After the game, he was so intense. If he was a troll like Lane Kiffin, I think he would have come up with this, because Holly Rowe asked him, what'd you think about the play of Carson Beck? But he was already so intense. He was like, we're going to eat, and we don't care about all this stuff. And he was so angry.
He told me to take pictures.
Yeah. They didn't want that message. But when she asked him about Carson Beck, he should have said, I love that guy. There's no way I'd bench him no matter how bad he's playing. That would have been a huge moment, which brings me to my next point. I'm selling the idea that the benching of Quinn Ewers is no big deal, because I kind of had that thought. Like, I was like, yeah, it was really bad. We watched it play. So there's one of 2 angles here that I want to get to, because I don't know. Oops, sorry about that. Didn't mean to celebrate.
Celebrate Quinn Ewers getting
Woo, Daddy's celebrating.
So Danny's Arch Manning Heisman ticket that he's quietly had in the corner.
In the moment, I'm like, yeah, he's playing awful. He's not looking great. They're not protecting him. But I'm wondering about the fallout from this. And I think it's one of either 2 things, because I was looking and trying to dissect this a little bit more, because I do think it is a big deal. Did you guys notice that Quinn Ewers did not address the media this week?
Yep.
In his normal scheduled available, media availability, did not talk.
Did
so
not.
I wonder where Quinn Ewers is mentally. Like, is there any sort of rift? Is he better? I would be. Anytime I got benched throughout my career, it's instant, just natural. It's human to be upset with your coaches. Like, you didn't believe in me. You didn't stick with me. You took me out of the game, even though you went back in and there's no question, like, you're the starter moving forward. The other thing I did wonder, and Bud asked me this going into that game about his performance against Mississippi State, his performance against Oklahoma. Like, is there anything lingering from the injury? And if you notice what he said, when he took him out, he said, I wanted to get him into the locker room, to clear his head. And I just wonder if there's still something with Quinn where there is something lingering with his injury. I think it's bigger because it's kind of been just kind of washed over. Like, it was a bad game, took him out, you're going back to him. I just wonder if there's more behind the scenes that we don't know. And one, it's either there's a rift, or two, which I probably lean more towards that maybe there's something lingering there and that's either way is a concern for Quinn Ewers. But I don't think it's something to just gloss over that Sark took him out of the game. And if Sark knows, or maybe saw something in practice about him not looking 100%, then maybe that's why he was more likely to take him out.
I think there's definitely, just based on trying to read the actions, I don't think Sark is benching Ewers knowing all that entails because of Arch Manning being on the bench and knowing the kind of stories that's going to create just for performance reasons, unless Quinn is playing truly epically terrible football. I definitely think that he's still not 100%. And Sark just thought maybe it's not Quinn. Maybe he's just not ready for this game yet. So I agree with you. I think there's definitely more to this story. And I would wager that it's more about Quinn not being 100% than it was just, I got to bench him.
I think that would be great news. I think that would be great news, because my read on this was, why do you feel that a third-year starter who's been there for you and played in huge games when you're playing at home, why does he need the clear your head break that you normally have reserved for an underclassman or a first-year starter? Because, like, that read of it is to, like, sell your Quinn Ewers stock and just be like, you know what? We've been trying to make this Quinn thing happen, and he's given us some high moments, but maybe he doesn't have, like, your it factor, whatever that killer gene is. Like, if you had doubts about that, there's a reading of, I just needed to get him to the locker room to clear his head, where you would just walk out of that bag. All right, well, Quinn's not going to be the quarterback to lead us to a national championship. If it is truly a health thing, then I think that's good, because then you're not taking a totally potentially unfair perspective on Quinn Ewers moving forward.
And the reason I came up with the angle that I did is, one, heard the news about him not talking to the media, but two, I was considering selling the Quinn Ewers stock. And then I was like, hold on a second. Same guy that beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa and threw up 3 touchdown passes and beautiful throws. The same guy that went to Michigan in a hostile environment, beat them. The same guy that played in the playoffs.
Led them all the way back.
Good enough to win. Like, all of these things, I'm like, wait. And the guy that rebounded against Oklahoma, and I know they didn't win the game, but like, that's where I'm not a believer. So I'm not selling the Quinn Ewers stock, but I am buying the idea that maybe there's something more to the story. Last one, and I want to move on to a big game breakdown. The other thing I'm selling is it's all Kalen DeBoer's lack of discipline. Bama's been lacking discipline for 2 years. Like, they were a highly penalized team last year. And I think we even talked about this and how Nick Saban was getting frustrated. And I know he pointed to the portal and NIL as one of the reasons. I also think, and I don't know if you guys saw AJ McCarron's
it's the TikTok.
Comment. Yeah, it's the bleeping TikTok.
It's that dang TikTok. These kids, they're on the TikTok. They're not playing football.
It is. But I do think that this is a different generation. It is harder than ever. But they're going to go back to touching the wall. They're going to touch the wall after every mistake at practice, because what is the TNT takes no talent. TNA.
Say-
Yeah, TNA is something else, Danny. I know you've been showing feet on Twitter.
Hey, I got to get that OnlyFans following up. That OnlyFans page. It's paying my daughter's retirement, or my daughter's weddings. It is. So yeah, that was the last one. That's the last one for me. It's not all Kalen DeBoer's fault.
I like that.
What are 3 weddings going to run, by the way?
Oh my gosh, I don't even want to
Got
know.
it.
There you go.
Hit up the OnlyFans.
I love Danny's face when we bring this up.
All right.
Just encourage him to elope. Vegas is
I
very
tried.
romantic.
I tried to get them all for $5,000 each. Give them a little contract to sign. There you go,
$5,000
$5,000 cash in your pocket.
Yeah. So one of them should take you up on it.
You know,
Okay,
some of these companies do like the predatory NIL stuff, or like they identify a good like sophomore in high school. Like, here's $7,000 for your career NIL rights.
And if they have a wedding like Jordan Giorgio, our buddy of the show, then I am going to be dead ass broke.
Imagine thinking Danny's wife's going to allow them not to have a wedding.
3 destination weddings.
Yeah.
Because destination weddings keep the head count down.
They do.
You know, like I'm gonna set a barrier for entry that I know that all these other cousins can't meet. You know?
Unless you get married on Lake Como,
Yeah,
like our
that's what I'm
girl
saying.
Jordan.
Yeah, all Danny's girls are getting married. They're going to get married in Italy. One will get married in Buenos Aires. Another, I don't know, like Sydney. I don't know where.
Yeah. Beach destination.
Yeah.
Perth.
Are we not allowed to say dead ass?
What?
Why can't we say dead ass?
I don't know.
Dead ass, dead ass, dead ass.
You guys curse all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like I had
Hey,
I had an almost
That's
almost
disgusting.
curse the other day.
we try to keep our like more like edge of the spectrum curse words, because then we need to mark it as explicit in the podcast feed, or Mikey's got to go in and put a bleep. So we try to stay accessible for anybody who's got their family settings turned on for their iTunes or Apple.
What number
Password.
should Danny's daughters accept?
See, I never curse unless we start talking about the weddings.
I'm going $25,000 each.
25 is a number that they might say yes to.
Yeah.
5, they're like they have Google.
Well, now they are, but I was trying to cut those deals.
They were
when
10 at the
7.
time.
Yeah, we're trying to get them. We're trying to get
Now they're
in
like
yesterday's
$1 billion.
price.
They're like, wow,
Pre-inflation.
Sign
$5,000.
binding contracts with 10-year-olds. Okay.
Yeah.
Equal
That's
bargaining power.
that'll hold up. Our lawyer says so. Okay.
Yeah.
Coming up on the other side, let's open it up. Let's get into some ball, big game breakdown, and more. Next. Love Joe in the tailgate. Y'all regularly give me Kent State first half under. That's about as explicit as can be. Yeah, it gets foul and vile. All right. On Wednesdays, we like to, we save our picks for the Thursday show for our weekly locks, but we like to go inside the matchup with Big Game Breakdown. On Tuesday's CBS Sports Network show, you can check out as we went inside the matchup for Oregon and Illinois, your big time game on CBS. Then also the Penn State. What's that? Also the Penn State Wisconsin game. If you any
Also, the government came and got Chip for like 10 minutes.
I know. Yeah, what was up with that?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was Bud. That's what we've decided. Bud was doing a hostile takeover of the CBS Sports Network show. Pull the plug on me.
I don't think you're gonna get Wally Pipp, but it's I may find another place in the lineup. We'll see.
So go ahead and check that out over wherever you get your podcast, or over on youtube.com/cover3 for the full CBS Sports Network show. So I thought we would begin Big Game Breakdown with a look at LSU at Texas A&M, because as we mentioned earlier when we were discussing Garrett Nussmeier, you look up as we get ready to turn the calendar to November, and LSU has not lost since that season opener. They find themselves going on the road to go play a Texas A&M team that was obviously riding high after Missouri. And I think that there's some things that they feel like they can certainly work on, especially at the quarterback position after last week's performance. So, Bud, as we start to break down LSU and Texas A&M, what are some of the matchup points that stand out to you?
So ultimately, I think we need to figure out which quarterback is A&M going to get. Like the Wegman that we saw last week, or the Wegman who we saw play basically flawless football against Missouri, or the Wegman who we saw play pretty poorly against Notre Dame. So we kind of have like one really bad game, one just lights out flawless game, and one game that was just sort of like he wasn't special last week against Mississippi State. If he hits more throws, if he moves a little better in the pocket, then I think they probably dust Mississippi State a little bit earlier than they were able to put that game away. Like to me, that's huge. It's no longer controversial for me to say for the fourth week in a row that LSU's defense is better without Harold Perkins, but it is like not controversial, but it actually is better without Harold Perkins. And that's not us knocking Harold Perkins. They're able to play the personnel on the field that they want to play. Some of these younger guys for LSU have done a pretty good job of stepping up in recent weeks on the defensive line. So I like that a lot. One question I would have though, is just back to back real like all out wars for LSU. And I know the Arkansas game, it ended up okay, but that's not an easy game to go play, right? Like it didn't feel like 34-10 the entire time. And they played a lot of snaps against Ole Miss. Like how much juice does this relatively thin LSU defense still have in it? That's
a good point.
That's the kind of question I would have.
Off week on the other side of this before they come back for Bama. I haven't counted how many games in a row we're at here.
I saw Scorton got hurt, right? Against Mississippi State, I believe. Where was this at? Yeah, on Saturday. I'm going through my notes here that I take on games.
LSU already had one off week, the 5th, so we're not dealing with a crazy 6 or 7 in a row. Yeah,
5:41 p.m. I have in my log. Scorton limping badly for the Aggies. So that would have been what, like, did he come back in the game? I don't know, chat, if you want to tell me if he came back in.
They were dehydrated, cramping, sick.
Okay, so hopefully he's good. Nussmeier's pocket movement in the last two games has been like, he's made a lot of money, I think, with that. With all the pressure that Ole Miss got and Arkansas got some pressure, 0 sacks. He's avoided the pressure pretty well. He's played pretty well with guys around him. That's going to be key because A&M has real pass rushers. This is a real road environment, even better than what Arkansas has. I'm a little worried for LSU here, but there's obviously a lot of things to like.
Mentioned the stat the other day. I've been yelled at by South Carolina fans about it, but he's been pressured over 22% of his dropbacks, 64 times total. He's been sacked once. South Carolina fans will tell you he's been sacked twice. South Carolina fans, I will tell you, sacking somebody on a 2-point conversion attempt does not count officially as a sack. Learned ball. What I'm wondering is, does LSU even bother trying to run the ball against Texas A&M? Because LSU is not an offense that really bothers trying to run the ball that often to begin with. I think they rank 125th or 126th in rush rate overall. But if you look at this Texas A&M defense and how they, perform, they've been much better against the run than they are against the pass. They're not bad at either one of them. It's just, if you're going to attack this team, you want to attack it in the air more than you do on the ground. So matchup wise, it'll be interesting to see how Texas A&M deals with that, because Nussmeier is playing very well. He is one of the better quarterbacks they're going to see all season, if not the best one. So how they handle it, what they do to try to maybe force LSU into some runs, just trying to get him to run the ball a little bit more. And on the other side, Bud touched on it. I do think the biggest key for this game is what's Connor Wegman going to look like. Because it's so hard to know who this Aggies team is, because we've seen like 4 different versions of it already this year. There was the Notre Dame version. There was the Marcel Reed version. There was Connor Wegman is the greatest quarterback alive version. And then there was last week, it's like Connor Wegman was Connor Wegman-ish again. So I don't know what team this is. And going into this against a pretty damn good LSU squad, it's a really interesting game. It's one I don't have a great read
on. Somebody, if you really wanted to go next level, maybe it's Mike Elko, should send Will Lee a blanket from Kyron Lacey. Like just get him fired up, go deep state. Yeah, flip it on him, just get him fired up again. I love that matchup. Kyron Lacey, Will Lee going toe-to-toe, another good one. Agree with everything you guys said. They're almost opposites of one another too, because LSU passes it 60% of the time. A&M wants to run it 60% of the time. So when we saw Marcel Reed at quarterback, I was pretty pretty firm that I thought that was the guy, right? Why would you go back to Connor Wegman? And then the Mizzou game happened. You're like, hey, trust the coaches. That's what they see every time. Now I'm a little bit waffling on that, like because of what Bud was talking about Mississippi State. There were quite a few like interceptable passes that he had. It was sloppy. It was not pretty. And you've got this kind of volatile quarterback who we don't have a huge body of work with in Connor Wegman. You go back to the Notre Dame game where it was probably his worst game. You know, they lost. He missed on some throws. It's just what can you bank on? I don't think you feel good. Clearly, LSU has the quarterback advantage, but I think similar to the Mizzou game, can LSU stop Le'Veon Moss? You know, is that going to be can they up front physically handle him? So that to me is like the key for the game. And does Connor Wegman, can he get that rhythm going? Because I do think he's a guy. It started off really good against Mizzou. They were running the ball, they go up, and then he kind of continues the momentum. I think the start for the game is huge to A&M. The other thing, what I've noticed too across college football is when you have really good offensive lines versus really good defensive lines, typically given the edge to the defensive lines. You know, so that worries me for LSU. Their offensive line is really good. We've talked a lot about the NFL talent that's up there, but I do wonder, and some of it may be road environments. I go back to the Oregon-Ohio State game. Like Ohio State's offensive line was really good. They didn't look quite as good as they always did on the road against Oregon's front seven, or even their defensive line, which we didn't talk a whole lot about. But and I don't want to say exposed, but it's like all of a sudden things are a lot different. And so that's what I worry about. And Garrett Nussmeier has been awesome. I just wonder if this is the game where they get home more and it impacts them more.
Do you think that what they are like, Bud, you mentioned that they're playing a lot harder, you know, everything that we've seen in terms of the adjustment, like Tom, Danny, do y'all agree? Are you buying this LSU defense has gotten better? Like we're
the secondary is still hit or miss, but the front seven is playing much better.
I mean, I think the way they played against Ole Miss was good.
Yeah. And Whit Weeks has been like awesome, like, you know, in the conversation for potentially, you know, defensive player of the year for the SEC.
Like they still got, I mean, this is now 3 or 4 games in a row where if you measure them against what most teams do, like they are doing a better job against their opponents than most of their opponents, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I'm it is crazy. Did you guys know that teams can get better? Isn't that wild? You know, you can improve. You're not going to be what you are on the first game of the year all season long.
I got another stat here for you if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's from David Hale. I thought it was pretty interesting, and it really plays into this game. So, versus FBS teams, LSU's explosive play differential is negative 2.2%. So, like worse than Florida State, Northwestern, Kentucky. LSU is 5-1 against FBS teams. The P4 teams who have a worse explosive play differential versus FBS than LSU are combined 19-37. So it does seem like LSU is skating by, like allowing explosives and not creating explosives themselves. But they're also maybe like better inside of the scoring area than you would think, I guess, on both sides of the ball. Like maybe, I don't know why that would be necessarily.
So is the signal to that noise that they're playing red zone roulette and coming up with timely stops? Like they'll let an explosive go around the middle of the field and then they get into scoring position and figure out a way to bow up?
I kind of think so, yeah. Like allowing explosive plays with how aggressive they are on defense, like that certainly tracks. Like that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, when you have an explosive play differential like that, that's kind of interesting.
I think part of it is like overall their explosive play rate isn't great because they have none on the ground. Like they can't run the ball. So it's like I think that hurts your overall rate.
Explosively, you mean?
Yeah.
Because Durham's been okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I do think that there is a somewhat of a surprising lack of big plays. Because even in the passing game, if you take running out, they're still in the 40s. It's not like they've been elite doing that. And I would think that with their quarterback and some of the receiver talent, you would be able to find a few bigger plays. But at the same time, if defenses don't have to respect your run game, because you're not running the ball. It's easier to keep plays in front of you in the passing game. Want another fun stat for this game?
Yeah.
Sure.
Since he came to LSU, Brian Kelly is 4-6 against ranked teams. He's 1-6 against ranked teams at neutral sites or on the road.
Which speaks probably to the power of Death Valley as much, and also maybe his own failures out there on the road. All right. Very interesting. And we gave you a whole lot of stats for a game that we all said we're not quite sure what's going to happen. That's
I feel good about this one.
That's what I do when I don't know. I just look up stats.
Like, I understand these teams deeply. I do not know what the result's going to be. Danny apparently dialed in.
I feel good about this one. Save it for tomorrow.
Let's go. 5-star Master Lock. Lock it.
He's got
up.
a first quarter under coming that he knows can't lose.
That's right.
All right, Danny, is all the TNA going to work for Alabama? It's just
Great recruiting.
Yeah, they could be touching the wall.
I'm leave that one alone.
I described this to you yesterday on CBS Sports HQ that this is a drunken bar fight. Like, neither of these teams are perfect. They're both sloppy. And how do you see what's the actual football that we can put on paper in terms of our expectations and where this is decided?
I think Bama, and this is the thing, I think they've had to rely on Jalen Milroe. And this is one of the things I was doing when I was prepping for LSU A&M and going back to A&M, what they did to Mizzou.
Yeah.
I think that's what Bama needs to do to Missouri. And I think they will get away from Milroe having to carry so much of this offense. I think they'll get away from Milroe having to throw it 50 times. And I think they'll get Jam Miller and the run game going more. I think that's got to be their priority number one. And I do think they have success doing that. And it's hard for me. I think Missouri is fraudulent. I don't think they're as good. And I don't think that's any shock to anybody. I know they came back and they had an impressive win against Auburn. I just don't think they're as good as we thought coming into the season, or maybe early this season when they got in the top 6. And I think Bama's more into a place of desperation, but I think it does boil down to Bama getting back to running the football. Their offensive line, which has been struggling, they've been going against some really good defensive fronts. I think what they needed to do was go against Missouri's front.
When you look at Alabama the last couple of weeks, their passing offense has been awful. Like, it was good there for a while. Like, they weren't, Jalen was playing pretty well, all things considered. And you go game to game against, Wisconsin, Georgia, Vandy, they were able to move the ball in the air. They couldn't do it against South Carolina. They couldn't do it against Tennessee. And I think the common denominator between those two teams is up front, like you kind of just mentioned, Danny. Its defensive lines are pretty damn good. And there was a lot of pressure on Jalen, and he was kind of just flustered all damn day in both of those games. I feel like if I'm facing Mizzou, I don't put Mizzou's defense near the level of where I would put Tennessee or South Carolina, particularly on the defensive line. Not to say they're bad, but I just don't think they're at that level. But I also think that they are much better there than they are on the back end. So if I am Alabama and I want to expose this defense, I kind of want to do it through the air. So can we see them get back to how they looked early in the year, where they weren't just having Jalen run, forcing him or by choice repeatedly? Can they get a little bit more of the drop back kind of game going? Can they work to the receivers? Let's see if they can find big plays that way, because I think that is where Mizzou is most vulnerable. On the other side, I don't have a ton of faith in the Mizzou offense right now. I think that, first of all, Brady Cook is an absolute stud for what he did last week, going to the hospital, getting back, coming back, playing, and then leading the comeback late. But just overall, I think this offense really misses Cody Schrader. Like, they weren't an incredible rushing offense last year, but Schrader was very reliable workhorse, a guy who could keep the chains moving and helped keep that offense on the field. And I think helped set things up for that passing game, because defenses had to be worried about him. And I just don't think they have that element this year. And I think they're easier to defend because of it. And you're seeing Luther Burden's not having an incredible year. Weiss is not having an incredible year. They're having great moments, but overall the consistency and the performance just hasn't been there. So it's hard for me to trust that they're going to figure that out this week against Alabama, because even if I don't think this Alabama defense is incredible, or at least to the level it's been that we've known, and it's had problems against explosive passing offenses, I just don't know that Mizzou is capable of exploiting it as often as they're going to need to win this game. And I think that's the key. I think Brady Cook and those receivers have to have the best game that they've had of this season by a lot if Mizzou is going to pull this off.
Fully agree with you, assuming we get like some kind of baseline level on Milroe. To me, Milroe has not looked right for a couple weeks, and like he didn't look nearly as explosive in the Vanderbilt game. He didn't look very good. I mean, he was awful against Tennessee. That was like one of the worst statistical games Alabama quarterbacks played in like a decade. So like, what's more likely, that all of a sudden he sucks for no reason after lighting up Georgia, or that he, is more dinged up than they're letting on? I know which option I would choose. Like, how much juice does he have in the tank? Because they may need him in the legs. I know McElroy was talking about how like the fundamentals in terms of the pocket have just fallen apart the last 2 weeks. Just like throwing with your feet, like put totally together, and just a lot of weird stuff, or just like losing the fundamentals, which maybe he's thinking too much. I don't know. But I mean, Bama's definitely beatable if he's not right. Like, I'm not saying that they will lose, because obviously they've said it's high ankle for Brady Cook. Mm-hmm. So, but who knows like how bad that thing blows up this week, and if he's able to move it around. Bama's got some pass rushers. They can get after you. But I mean, to me, a lot of this is Milroe. You take Milroe off Alabama, they're like a 6-6 team, I think.
Take Milroe off Alabama. Are the rest of the pieces better or worse than the non-quarterback pieces of South Carolina?
Shoot, South Carolina just can't throw. That's tough. Like, assuming Simpson could chuck it around a little. 6-6 probably too much. Probably 7-5.
Yeah,
I should probably kind of. But like, I mean, it's a pretty big drop off from his best. I don't know how big the drop off is. It's certainly something from where he is, or how he has been playing the last 2 weeks. Maple in the chat, I think, had the stats. I mean, like, really concerning stuff there. Where are we at? Yeah, Milroe last 2 weeks, 6.5 yards per attempt. I mean, that's like benchable level. 2 touchdowns, 4 picks.
There's been a lot about his mechanics. It's almost like, and I think I texted you guys in the group chat, it felt like last year's version of Jalen Milroe, early last year. And it just, there's something about mechanics that are important. This is why I'm such a believer in like being a natural passer of the football. Like, you're naturally accurate. You can fine tune it, but I just don't know if Milroe's naturally accurate. And it still doesn't mean they couldn't win with him. And they might, maybe, he could, I mean, shoot, last year he took them all the way to the playoffs. That's more of like an NFL perspective. Like, where does his draft go? But I think once you see like you're pressured, you get hurt, that's when you go back to what you naturally just do, which happens all the time in the NFL. And then now we're seeing it happen. So you kind of revert to what you are. And I just don't think he's a very naturally accurate passer, because there were a lot of plays. Both those quarterbacks left so many yards on the field with plays to be made, and they weren't easy throws. I mean, I think of him getting out, scrolling to his right, scrambling to his right, and there's like a comeback route or a guy coming back to the ball and it just bounces to him. Like, I think it's a combination of that. Plus, I do think he's really banged up.
Is there any result that calms the consternation around the Alabama fan base?
Yeah, if they beat the hell out of Missouri.
Yeah.
Think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is entirely
resounding
possible.
Win.
Mm-hmm.
Resounding win. But
they have like Texas A&M did it. So there you go. Like, there's your example. It was at home. They came out, dominated from start to finish. It doesn't have to be the same score.
Right.
I mean, you would like to see a 24-3, 31-10.
But if this thing is like 28-28 going into the fourth quarter,
panic, booze, all of it.
Yeah.
I do feel
throwing
like
stuff on the field to get the officials to change the call.
Hey, man. Oh, no, I don't have a good McConaughey, so I don't want to do it right now. But when McConaughey released a statement, and then that was a news item that McConaughey had released a statement, and he used the term BS in all cap, like a B and an S, like 4 times in that statement. I mean, that was a voice to text of an official statement if I've ever seen one. That's
not cool.
Not cool.
Not cool.
That's just BS, man. Come on.
Yeah.
And it starts with the Gators. All right.
We have to shake hands on that.
Coming up on the other side, turning our attention to some of the other interesting matchups of the week, from big game breakdown to mid game breakdown. Next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Anyone got a good read on Pitt and Syracuse? I know we had some Pitt fans in the tailgate pulling up early and wondering if that was going to get any much of a look here on Wednesday's breakdown show. I've got some thoughts, but I'm curious to hear where that game is on y'all's radar right now.
All right, it's going to be an awesome game. I can't wait for this one. This is one, and you and I are on the same page because I think we're in total agreement about what we're going to see here. Yeah. I think it's going to be an offensive, fireworks fest with both of these offenses going toe-to-toe. Eli Holstein, this Cade Bell system, which he's brought there, has been pretty consistent. They did get held in check by Cal, but I don't think Syracuse will have the same success. And then on the flip side, I called it a bizarro Pitt team because everything we've known outside the Kenny Pickett year, when he decided to move on because he didn't like all those points when Pat Narduzzi moved on. But like Pitt has usually been, let's play great defense, not turn it over. And now their defense isn't that great. So I think Kyle McCord, who's up there as one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I mean, Pat Narduzzi was raving about him, saying this is a player that you'll good as anybody in the country. And he's right. He said a guy you'll be playing in the NFL one day. I think he knows how good that offense can be too. So I think this is going to be a high scoring game. That's back and forth and coming down to the wire in the fourth quarter.
I'm largely on the same page with you. I do think that there are some things. Syracuse has some like real sketch wins. If you look at like a post-game win expectancy model, it's like, okay, like they didn't play well against Stanford. The post-game win
they lost that game.
Right. But like then like the PGWE, like the post-game win expectancy stuff, like they hated their game against UNLV. They really hate, like I think they had like a 9% post-game win expectancy against NC State. And sometimes that just keeps working. Hello, TCU in 2022. Hello, Oklahoma State, honestly, in 2023 for much of the year. And then eventually somebody steps on the slipper of Cinderella. Pitt has, I feel like, not been quite as good as what the scoreboard has said at times. But I don't think Pitt has like completely luck boxed some of these games. They have gotten away with some stuff. We called it out. Like Holstein, we've said it on the show multiple times. Like, yes, he's playing better than I thought. He should not play tight end. I was wrong. But also, there's a lot of drop picks, bro. And like UNC got one and actually housed it. And you know what? Pitt still covered despite giving up pick 6. That doesn't happen. Like your cover rate's not real high from a betting perspective if you give up that pick 6. I think Pitt is more real than Cuse is, though. Overall, I think I like their weapons a little bit better, and I think Pitt is better along the lines of scrimmage by a little bit. But I don't know, like if I'm like in a crazy rush to go out and lay a touchdown. BYU, to the point of the chat, BYU's definitely been crazy lucky so far this year. I think they're also maybe improving in some ways. Like you can be lucky early and then get better late.
And then you can make your own luck.
Yeah, that's right. There we go. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if we got any locks on this. Tom?
I was just going to say, I don't think Pitt's offense has played well in either of its last 2 games. I think like Holstein's been bad in the last 2 games. And I think that based on how these teams are going right now, like I don't know how much stock to really put in the dues talking about Kyle McCord being the greatest quarterback that this team will have seen all year. But I do feel like this is a game where if it was at Syracuse, I'd think Syracuse is going to win. But since it's at Pitt, I think Pitt's going to win. I don't think either one of these teams is playing great football right now.
Which, as we said, 2001, last time Syracuse has won at Pitt.
Donovan.
Can we get a ruling?
Oh, it was Troy Nunez, and we looked that up. Yeah.
You want a ruling?
Well, yeah. Okay. Slow pitch softball. Not like the super, like not A, but like B ball. Like, is it appropriate to?
How big are the balls? Give me an inch
yeah.
here.
Like the well, I'm trying to use not a Florida man reference. We'll say grapefruits. You guys have grapefruits up there in the
like 16-inch.
All right. Yeah. Is it okay to intentionally walk a guy like 4 times? I think that's kind of BS, right? Like,
am I friends with him?
Is it the playoffs?
I don't know. No,
waiting for seeding?
No, regular game.
Okay.
I don't know. It happened last night, and our group chat's popping off about it. How like it's insane.
Who got what? Who was the guy? Who was it?
Our 2-0 hitter. He's a good hitter. Played college ball, like but not like somebody hits the ball every single time. It's just he's just a big guy.
So they were scared of him.
I thought it was kind of BS.
What about Friday night on the mothership CBS Sports Network? Boise State. Does Ashton Jeanty finally get held in check going up against UNLV's defense? Does Boise State's defense have enough stops for UNLV's offense? Where do you see this one coming down?
I'm a little bit concerned about UNLV's explosive play rate allowed at times. They had a really good game against Fresno, but Fresno was really banged up in that ball game. And then last week, Oregon State, from a success rate perspective, UNLV was pretty clearly superior. But on explosive play perspective, not so much. So I don't think Boise's defense is any great shakes, but I do think Jeanty and this Boise offense are going to score and score quite a lot, probably. This is the best offense that UNLV will have faced by a pretty good margin. I think it's considerably better than what Syracuse has. And Cuse moved the ball on them pretty well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also appreciated what Barry Odom said during his press conference when he was asked about how they were going to stop Ashton Jeanty. He said, well, Lanning's getting a whole lot of credit for putting 12 guys out there. Maybe I'll put out 13.
Let's go, Barry.
I like Barry Odom.
Didn't Eli Drinkwitz say that too?
Did he? I know Odom said it.
I thought
that'd be weird if the guy who replaced him said it too, or maybe that's. No, this is a very. I'm very happy that this game is on Friday, so that way it's easier to get eyes on it without getting lost in other games, because this is a very, very big game. But I do think, based on what I have seen, I really enjoy this UNLV team. I really think Haj Malik Williams has been a boon to what they're doing offensively. But defensively, like Bud was just touching on, I think there are some legitimate concerns going up against Ashton Jeanty. I think Boise's probably going to win this game.
Danny, you want to save it?
I want to save it for tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Let's say.
I can tell you, I'm going to type in the chat what Danny's pick is right now.
All right, Danny. So, what does Notre Dame have in store for the Naval Academy?
Oh, by the way, Eli and Barry Odom both made the same joke. It's like that Twitter. When Twitter gets everybody, they say the same kind of lame joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's like out there. Yeah, they both said the same thing.
Both said, wow.
Yeah, Eli said the same
thing.
I
don't think they're on the same group chat.
No.
They
might be. You never know.
I mean,
I don't know.
No, I don't think so either.
There are certain coaches that, like, if they're parroting each other, I'm like, oh, I know which group chat that's coming from.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't think they're in the same group chat.
What is Notre Dame going to have for Navy? Maybe similar to what they had last year. I know it's different year and I know it's different people, but last year was 42-3, right? I think this is a huge step up. I think Notre Dame's defense, which is still banged up and still has a lot of guys that they're missing, is still going to be challenging for Navy to move the football on. And I think Riley Leonard, similar to a lot of quarterbacks that we've seen start slow, first year in the system, and they kind of get more comfortable as they go, he's getting more comfortable. The offensive line, which was a big storyline going into A&M. Remember, they lost the starter and they're playing a freshman, and they lost all these guys along the offensive line. They're kind of getting better too. And I know the competition hasn't been as good and their schedule has been light. I think this is going to be a huge mismatch for Navy playing against Notre Dame.
So Troop
I'm
disrespecter Danny.
I know. I hate it. Against Army, I think Army's better. I think of the upsets, I don't think either one of them pull off the outright upset, but if I was going to pick one, I'd think it'd be Army.
So I do have some concerns about the level of competition that Navy has faced. And like the sexy part of this matchup is this new Navy offense with Horvath, the quarterback, who's played awesome. And like I bet on him a lot this year there. Thank God for them, because the rest of my picks have sucked on this show. But look, Bucknell, Temple, UAB, which that was the backup quarterback game for UAB, I think 3 weeks ago, right? Or did they get Zeno? Maybe they knocked Zeno out of the game. Air Force and Charlotte are 5 of the teams they've played. But the one team they played with a real pulse on offense, and Memphis has more than a pulse. Like that's like a pulse plus. That's one of the best G5
Pulse
offenses.
plus, hell yeah.
Sure, like they're a good college offense. They're not like, Miami or something like that just scores at will, but like they're a pretty good college offense. 274 rushing yards. They gained 276. They only lost 2. And Memphis at the time was having some offensive line issues too. I watched them the prior week against FSU. I'm a little concerned that Navy was only able to get 2 yards lost against the Memphis offense. They put up 274. And then 385 through the air is kind of what you would expect. I mean, they ran 95 plays, which is a ton, but they put up 659 yards of offense on Navy. And I'm a little concerned about this Navy defense more than normal. Like normally it's good, and I think some of the pace is masking it this year. I'm not really sure this is good. They've played one. Yes, Memphis is good. The rest of the offenses flat out suck. Like among like the bottom 10 in college football, or they're an FCS team. So this is a real curious one for me. Is Notre Dame really not going to score 30? Unless the pace is just super low. Like if we get like a 9 possession game, then okay, maybe you're not averaging 4 points per possession or something like that.
Because if they're going to use the NIU playbook, you are trying to limit the possessions in this game.
Yeah, and Navy's a lot better than NIU, but
right.
I'm a little concerned about this Navy defense after just really they've only played like 90 snaps against a decent team.
I'm gonna have a lot more on this tomorrow,
okay.
But I will say I echo a lot of what Bud said. Hint, 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 hint. We might have a Latifah tomorrow based on what I'm hearing so far in this big game breakdown.
All right. So if I am to identify something, and this is not picks related, this is where it'll be decided. It'll be decided with 7s and 3s. Because right now, both of these teams are very, very good at turning red zone opportunities into touchdowns. And both of these defenses on the season have been very good at making sure that the opponent in red zone opportunities does not get touchdowns. 7s and 3s. Like you can almost track it during the game to sort of get an idea for who's going to have an edge. Because if the defense that it usually does not allow touchdowns is allowing touchdowns, that's not going to be good for that defense. As Bud and apparently all these other anti-American Cover 3 hosts are alleging, it seems like there's a lot of Navy skepticism. But if Notre Dame has to start kicking field goals, settle for 3s, then all of a sudden I think they're going to leave the door open for things getting a little tight. You got to leave the door open. See what listen, MetLife Stadium hasn't gotten to cheer a lot on. This could be an opportunity for America. And I'll leave that at that.
They got to do the fighter jet flyover, right? I mean, I was at Army Navy at MetLife, and it was incredible. One of the best flyovers I've ever seen when they had the Black Hawk helicopters or the Apache helicopters. I forget which brand they were coming over Army, and they timed it up perfectly. And then the Navy fighter jets came when Navy came out. They have to do the Navy fighter jets, right? Like coming over the flyover before the game.
Yeah. I mean, but trot it all out.
Yeah.
Give me the red, white, and blue smoke behind the jets.
Yeah. Every one of them carrying American flags too. Every single player.
That's never not cool to me.
Right.
Like that. I mean, jets? Yeah. Like it's. There used to be a spot at one of the stadiums we would go cover, and I don't want to blow it up if it is, where like you could kind of use the back door to go on the roof, and it was cool to watch games. Like other than the buzz of the huge lights, right? Like you wouldn't hear all like the press box chatter and the stuff, and you could just kind of take it in and watch. being up there for that was a really like, man, this is just because you're just like a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know.
You
ever take the boys to air shows?
They got to go on one Saturday this past year. No, not this past year. Like 3 weeks ago, Parker, while we were doing a game day Saturday, Parker took the boys to the jet port where there was a little air show before. It was like the same jets that were about to go do the flyover at Carter Finley started with like a little warm up exercise at the jet port in Sanford. So
nice, man.
They were there touching airplanes and getting to see some stuff. Maybe I'll get to see it in the spring. So over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, UCF Knights are now a favorite over BYU. Take us inside this matchup. Where's this one going to be decided?
Well, do you know who had a post-game weight expectancy of like minuscule last week? BYU against a very dead Oklahoma State team. So against an Oklahoma State team that did not want to start Alan Bowman, they started Garrett Rangel, and he got hurt, and it's probably out for the year. So they're going back to Bowman. Anyway, like they very well should have lost to Oklahoma State, but didn't. So congrats to BYU. But in terms of projecting forward, you kind of need to take a little more than the scoreboard there. Run game for BYU has got to be better. The quarterback actually has been playing a little bit better in some ways. I think like he's throwing fewer passes that should be picked that are dropped, at least I would say. UCF seems to have found something with Ja'Cory Brown, the quarterback who was the backup at Miami. I love the fit when they transferred. So that makes some sense. He still can't pass, but like UCF feels like very just like this is very Gussie. Like they literally went to the national title game in 2013, losing to the Noles with a kid who was a corner like the year before, right? So Gus kind of knows how to deal with the running quarterback thing. That's not an easy trip to make. I could see it. I mean, I don't know that I totally agree with him being favored, but I get it.
The other aspect of this, I don't know. It's been cooler here. I'm sure it's cooler in Orlando, but there's still kind of some humidity. That's a fourth quarter type game where BYU could be feeling it a little bit. But I'm with you.
BYU will be soaked in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. RJ Harvey has been opened up too with Ja'Cory Brown. Like, and that's the thing. Like the pairing of them both. That's what makes Gus a really good coordinator. He's been able to win without a guy who can throw it. I just do worry about Ja'Cory throwing picks. You know, he had a couple last week. Like, just don't make the big mistake. You know,
so
I think that's where I feel good.
Yeah.
We got a 3:30 game. We're looking at 80, 82, 80, 78, 75, 10% of rain, humidity at 65, 70, 65%. So yeah, there'll be some
wet.
Good call.
I look at the matchup, and I think part of it is, will BYU be able to stop the run? Because if you look at, like, clearly with Ja'Cory Brown in there, I think that UCF is better than they had been with KJ, even if he doesn't have a throwing threat. But you can just kind of lean into what you're very good at, and what UCF is very good at is running the ball. I think they're first nationally in success rate on the ground. And if you look at BYU defensively, success rate, I think they're about slightly below average for the national. So, like, you can down to down just kind of move the ball on the ground against this team. But at the same time, last week UCF nearly beat Iowa State, but if not for Iowa State turnovers, I don't know if UCF was ever actually in that game come the fourth quarter. So
very fair.
There is a lot of, I don't know how good either team truly is to this game based on what we've seen and based on some turnover luck. Like Beck did throw, like, I think what was one a pick six, or did he get like tackled at the 1 yard line?
No, they definitely had a pick six in that game.
Yeah. Okay. So, and there was the one where the guy dropped the ball at the 1 yard line.
Correct. Yeah.
So, I don't know that UCF is fixed completely. I think that on the ground they are dangerous. I think that at home, and I think that the run defense for BYU is one area you can get them. And if Jake Retzlaff is in a position where you do have him dropping back to throw more, as Bud mentioned, he has made some throws that are kind of like, bro, calm down, don't do that. So it could lead to problems. So it's a Big 12 game, man. The best team in the league versus one of the worst teams in the league. It's a damn coin flip.
Have you noticed, though, I did want to point this out because Neil Brown said that, that was Yormark's talking point. It feels that way in a lot of leagues.
Oh.
No. Oregon's playing Illinois right now as a 3-touchdown favorite.
Yeah, Yormark's just wrong. Like all these teams in this league are just somewhere between.
No, but I don't mean they're all. I don't mean the Big 12 all of a sudden is the same as the SEC or Big 10. But I mean Vanderbilt's been better. Kentucky went toe to toe with Georgia.
It's fair.
And then they got beat by Florida. Like it's. I think it kind of goes to that like parity point. And I think it's becoming more like the NFL. There's a couple bottom dwellers that are just no chance. There's a couple at the top, and then I do think the middle is like deeper, and then it's been and where you can see kind of these upsets that we've seen.
That's results more than spreads, though, and I think that the spreads kind of very much indicate that the BYU is or the Big 12. There is not much separation between any of these teams.
Where the spreads that were, Missouri, Alabama's 13.5.
Yeah,
but Arkansas, LSU was 2.5.
Yeah,
it's true.
But Arkansas's got a winning record. UCF's got like 2-4 in Big 12 play.
Although I will say Arkansas did lose to Oklahoma State.
True.
Yormark has a point that like all leagues are tighter than they used to be. I think pretty much across the board. But
he was trying to sell it as our league is the one that's the most competitive. And I think they're all getting pretty competitive.
Yeah,
I think it's the most competitive if you define competitive as close games.
Right. I didn't mean competitive for the national championship. I meant, competitive. They're each competitive in their own space.
The Big Ten might be perfectly tiered.
Yeah. I was about to say, I think the top of the other leagues is much different than the bottom of those same leagues.
It's like the Big Ten's got like about 4 here, then like 4 here, then like 4 here.
Oh, the Big Ten. Sorry,
yeah,
I thought you said Big 12. I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I'll tell you how I tier the Big 12, bud. There's 10 teams in one tier, and then there's 2 teams in another. That's how I tier.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bro, that's interesting.
And like sometimes you got to move up and like we had like a Michigan. I'm sorry, only took us a couple of weeks, but you got moved down a floor, right? It might be moved down another floor depending on how things go this weekend. But yeah.
I think this is sneakily like one of the best weekends of the year.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
Not from like a crazy high marquee type thing, but like Bowling Green Toledo is a really important game. Like we have some of these. I mean, Pitt Cuse is important. I know it's not a weekend game; it's a Thursday game, but we got a lot of these games this weekend that really, like, they will matter for a lot of conference races. Missouri Bama is for all intents and purposes, is a conference championship elimination game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. If you look at we have a bunch like that this weekend. It's
good.
Fun.
I'm really glad that you brought that Sun, because normally I try to bring all the optimism. I was looking at this thing and I was like, Utah, Houston, yuck.
Yeah, I mean that's not really one of the ones that was going to be high on the list.
The total for that game agrees with you. Did you see what it is?
I mean Auburn, Kentucky. Oh, there are some matchups where it's not even like how good or bad the team is. It's just sort of like where the team is in their season. The hopes, the dreams. How confident do you feel in this team? Like there's some matchups that might. I mean, West Virginia at Arizona. Fat pass.
Okay. Yeah, agreed on that one. Probably not to watch.
In my life. Self-care Saturday. I don't know.
Anxiety bowls across the board, guys. I mean, look at this. Like Michigan at Michigan State. What's the spread there? 4?
6 or 5. Yeah.
5 or 6. Yeah. It's been kind of.
Sharon Moore is not going to get fired this year. I don't think. There's no way. But you lose that ball game, that better. Like next year, better go really, really well. Kansas State. Like you would think, based on how poorly Kansas has played, that spread would be what, like 14? It's 10. I mean, that I could see that.
Danny, did you allege this is the bat phone game?
What was that?
That Brett Yormark's picking.
Yormark's going to call down to make sure.
I didn't say that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We can't. All right. We can't. Yeah. Come on. We're about to wrap this thing up. We've made it through the mid-game breakdown. We've made it through the big game breakdown. No boy breakdown.
I mean, do you think they got shot?
They've and I think this is the second David Hale shout out that we've given. Did you see Hale put out some stuff about the luck factor? Like, because it's just Florida State has had awful luck in addition to awful play, but they have just had so many things go against them.
If you're a turnover truther, you're saying that they're coming because they are dead last in the country with only 3 turnovers gained on the whole season.
But their defense has actually been playing pretty good. Like, that was his point, was like the defense, and he put up some stats next to Clemson's. It was like resume A, resume B, and they were very, very similar, except for the turnovers where they have been lacking. It would have to go perfect for Florida State to be competitive. Like, if they could just catch some of these balls that they've been dropping, if you don't have Brock Glenn throw it right to a guy's hands, like when he's right in just a zone coverage and he doesn't see him. I don't know. There's some concern around Tallahassee that Mario might try to run it up too.
Yeah.
After what you did last year. Yeah.
Right. So there's some concern of that potentially, which I wouldn't lie if I said I'm not concerned either. Can the defense get after Cam Ward? Can they, I don't know. Bud?
I don't think they have a real shot to win this ball game. No. Mainly because like Miami can run the ball better than any team they've seen so far. I think like Miami's rush success rate's really high. If they have to lean on that, the whole like could Cam Ward throw them the game? Sure, I guess like that remote possibility exists, but I don't think that. Again, I want to emphasize the word remote there. I think that's a very low chance, and I don't think that Miami's going to let him do that. Like I think they will probably try to be physical, establish the run. I don't know that Florida State can score like more than. I mean, what's like the best possibility they could score here? Like they're coming off like from a down-to-down basis, like their best game of the year.
Yeah, and I think the best outcome is similar to the Clemson game.
Like 17?
I think the best you can hope for is the Clemson game. Because the Clemson, they gave up a lot of yards, but they were able to get some stops, force some field goals. Brock Glenn played okay. I mean, actually, I think it was one of his highest rated games they've seen from a Florida State quarterback. That, to me, would be a success if you can keep it where it's respectable.
So,
and,
what are the implied team totals here? Like, so we're at 54.5, call it 54, so 27 aside, give like 10 there. So like 38, to
14. Yeah.
Hold on. I've got this at FanDuel Sportsbook where you can make every single moment more. Miami
said implied team totals.
Well, shouldn't they be close? I mean, Florida State's Miami's team total.
You got the real ones, then yeah.
Yeah, Miami's team total. Miami's team total's at 37.5.
Okay, that was close.
Florida State's at 16.5.
Bud's asking for implied odds. Chip's just giving him the odds.
Which one seems more inaccurate to you?
More
Florida
inaccurate?
State.
Miami
Florida
dropping
State.
38 plus, or Florida State?
Florida State.
Yeah, I think it's more likely. I don't know though. Like they definitely could.
38-10 sounds like a score.
Yeah, that's very possible.
My man Dusty's calling the game.
Oh,
is he really?
God, it's going to be fun in the radio booth on Monday.
Sucks for him. Oklahoma's got Ole Miss. Combined 39-point underdogs between Oklahoma and Florida State.
Yeah, Oklahoma Ole Miss is another one. Where I'm like,
Dusty and Danny crying in the morning on Monday.
We should. I'm going to hit our producer and have him write up that open. We'll get a new open. That's pretty good.
That's very, very good.
Going back to the turnover point, I just want to point this out. Florida State's points off turnover margin per game is negative 9.29. That is the worst in the nation. The teams they are hovering around are Middle Tennessee, Temple, Akron, App, and Southern Miss.
Right. Like the net success rate in that game against Duke is never something I want to have to talk about for Florida State against Duke, because I just shouldn't give a damn. But of course, in this one, I'm like, well, shit, they actually played like a lot better than they normally play. Just like the magnitude of the turnovers was huge. I mean, you lost the game when you gave up like 160 total yards, which is hard to do, but not if you go on drives and then drop balls and turn it over.
Oh, and the holes on that first field goal too. I mean, it was just a calamity. Like you could just see it all, spinning out of control. I mean,
I felt great about that game too. I
loved being on the Knowles money line that night.
I'm not gonna lie, like I didn't watch first quarter live. I had on YouTube TV. I scrolled through each play, like to cut out the dead time, and then I watched the final 3 live. First quarter was like whatever. Like they're dead to me this year.
Hey, listen, it's a house of horrors. Maybe SMU will find out. We'll see.
Ooh.
We'll be back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for the best time of the week. It will be our locks for week 9. So come and hang out, and you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernell. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.
See ya.